Hi, my name is Dan Brown, and this is my video journal where I talk about my ongoing recovery from a tough stage 4 prostate cancer diagnosis earlier this year. Before I get into today's topic, I want to mention that I'm going with a hat today. The reason is my hair is definitely not a good scene right now. It needs to be buzzed off. I had my second chemo treatment this week, so the hair is definitely going. Unfortunately, my wife Amanda is away this weekend chaperoning a school function, so she's not here to help me. So I'm going to stick with the hat. I suspect during my next video I will be unveiling a new look. So today's topic is what I call my mental game. And I like to focus on a very specific aspect of that, which is gratitude. Now, I know that gratitude is a big buzzword. I was in the supermarket not too long ago and I saw, gratitude splashed across the cover of a magazine. So before you, change the channel, I want to tell you a couple quick personal stories that illustrate what gratitude means to me and more importantly, how it's helped me in my recovery. So if we go back to the time of my diagnosis back in April of this year, I had gone through a long period where I was experiencing a lot of pain. It all started with a back injury around Thanksgiving of 2016. It took a long time to diagnose. Over time, the pain was getting worse and worse. I didn't realize it at the time, but that was due to the cancer metastasizing into my bone structure. By the time I was diagnosed, I was on 40 milligrams of Percocet per day, and that was barely keeping up with the pain. I'm pleased to say that I don't take any painkillers today except for the occasional Advil. So by the time I got to Robert Wood Johnson Hospital for my first appointment there, where I'm receiving excellent care, by the way, I was not in a good place mentally or physically. And I'll never forget the appointment with Dr. Kim, who was the head of urology over there. Before we met him, his incredible nurse Stephanie came in. She had my charts in her hand and she was looking down, and I remember her looking up and saying, I know why you're here. We have a plan and we're going to help you get better. And then she said, I'm sure that you think that your diagnosis is pretty bad. Well, I can tell you the reason that Dr. Kim is late is because he's in the next room with a guy whose situation is a lot worse than yours is. So then when Dr. Kim came in and we started to talk, he told me a story about a gentleman who had a diagnosis similar to mine, who he had operated on 5 years prior. He had just bumped into this gentleman about a month before our meeting, and the gentleman was doing quite well. So once I started to hear some of these stories, whether they were true or not, Dr. Kim and Stephanie may have just been experts at telling me what I needed to hear in that moment, but it gave me hope. It was really the first time that I started to experience hope up to that point. Later that day, I ran a gauntlet of diagnostic tests. I had 2 MRIs, I had a CT scan, I received my first hormone therapy injections, which uses a drug called Degarelix. And then toward the end of the day, I received a drip of dexamethasone, which is a very powerful corticosteroid. So a long day. We went home. We actually stopped and grabbed a slice of pizza. We were starving and exhausted. Got home, collapsed into bed, woke up the next morning, and I lay there in bed, and what I noticed right away is that my pain was probably 70–80% gone. The pain that I had had in my legs so long that was making it difficult to walk was probably 80–90% gone. And in that moment, this wave of gratitude just washed over me. It's hard to explain. It was like nothing I had ever experienced in my life, but just to finally be in a good place after so many months of trying to figure out what was going on and to to gain some hope, I just rode this wave, and I rode it for the better part of a month. In fact, I would say that I'm still on that wave of gratitude. That was sort of the first thing, and that's where I would say my gratitude mindset was born. About a month after that, I needed to go back to the hospital. Well, I go there a lot, but I was back for a blood transfusion. I needed a unit of blood. I was having some issues. My wife Amanda and I were there in the hospital. It was taking a very long time to get my transfusion set up. I found myself feeling impatient. We were waiting for 2.5 hours. They were just kind of getting it going. But we noticed there was a woman sitting in the bay across from us, and she was very peaceful. She had a very serene smile on her face. And when I would get up to go to the bathroom, I would say hello, and she was friendly. So finally, after 2.5 hours, I got my IV. Took about an hour and a half. So after, I guess, 5 hours, we were leaving there. It was about 6:30 p.m. And we stopped to chat with this lady, and we said, hey, what's going on? Why is it taking so long for you to get going? And she smiled and said, well, I have a more rare blood type, and they had to go off-site to get my blood for my transfusion. But she said, that's okay, because I don't have anyone at home, so I don't mind being here. And plus, they're going to feed me, so I don't have to go home and make dinner for myself. And that was a kind of a turning point moment for me, because I thought, here I am with my beautiful wife Amanda. She's been by my side through every treatment, through every ordeal that I've been through. We're going home together. And here's this, poor lady who was really by herself while she goes through this. So it was in that moment and moments like that that I learned the power of reframing. I could give you countless examples, going into my radiation treatments, and seeing people wheeled in there in their hospital beds to receive radiation. At one point, we were waiting for my treatment, and there was a young girl in there. She was probably 8 or 9 years old, and she was wearing a headscarf. And I quickly realized that the reason she had a headscarf was because not only was she going through radiation, but she was going through chemo at the same time as well. So reframing is about understanding that, at least for me, that there's always someone who is worse off than I am. There's no question about that. What I like to do is, when I wake up in the morning, I like to take an inventory of all of the things that are good in my life. And it's a very long list. And I choose not to focus on the negative things. And I can tell you that it's very much a choice. So for a while, I actually had a list of all the things I was grateful for. I don't need to carry that list around with me anymore, because I have those things memorized and I know what they are. But, I would say if you're struggling in this area, it's helpful. Make a list, keep it in your wallet, keep it in your purse. And at least for me, when I would look at that list or think about it, the improvement for me would be substantial, and it would really be instantaneous. So there's no question in my mind that gratitude is helping me get better. I can see that in my measurements, my blood tests. I won't go into those details here. The last thing I just want to say, as a cyclist, and I talked in my welcome video about how I'm a lifelong cyclist, whenever I start to feel sorry for myself as I'm going through some of this stuff, I just remind myself that, it's easy to get into a mental rut, and feeling sorry for myself, at least for me, is kind of the equivalent of pushing my bicycle up a hill. And I learned very early on as a cyclist in my early 20s, that's just not acceptable. That's just something that you don't do. No matter how hard it gets, you always keep turning over the pedals, and eventually you get to the top. So that's really it for today. I hope you found this content useful, and thank you for watching.